On Ash on Ash Wednesday, I said to the congregation at 7:30, as I say every year on Ash Wednesday, that it is my deep, abiding, and fervent hope that each of us would engage in the holy practice of Lent, that we not only embrace this season, but that we live fully into it. That if we are going to look for ways and engage ways of transformation, that we do self-reflection, and that we take a look at who we are, take a look at our lives in light of our walk with God, and what are those things that we would ask God to help mend, break, reshape, mold, create in us, so that we could be uh, the fullness of God's presence in the world. And as I mentioned to the congregation then, it's a season that I take seriously because it's the only time in the Christian year when I am asked to do self-reflection and to look at my life with all of its warts and failures and shortcomings, and to somehow reconcile that with the reality that you and I are loved unconditionally by God. And so I want you to just, for a moment, to just not focus on what's happening in the world or what's happening in your life, but to give your time and attention over to God. So during this Lenten season, I've decided to read The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. It is a wonderful book, and I highly encourage you to read it if you've not done so. It is It is a book that is widely read. It was written during medieval times, and second to the Bible, this is the most widely read book. Right. So after the Bible, people generally go to Thomas à Kempis' work, The Imitation of Christ. What I'd like to do is to read just a brief introduction about Thomas à Kempis, for those who do not know him or may not be familiar with Thomas. And then I want to read in a meditation from the Imitation of Christ, um, that fits with today's gospel lesson on resisting temptations. So I'm going to just share with you just real briefly an introductory note on Thomas à Kempis, read Resisting Temptation. And then after that, what I would like to do is to have just a moment of silence. And then I would invite you to share your reflections if you feel Thomas à Kempis words are speaking to you, something that perhaps God has revealed something to you through Thomas's words. Uh, it could be how, if its words are moving you in a different direction, what is the Spirit saying to you through Thomas à Kempis' words on resisting temptation? So, uh, just a little introductory note on Thomas à Kempis's life. The treatise of the Imitation of Christ appears to have been originally written in Latin early in the 15th century. Its exact date and its authorship are still a matter of debate. Manuscripts of the Latin version survive in considerable numbers all over Western Europe, and they, with the vast list of translations and of printed editions, testify to its almost unparalleled popularity. One scribe attributes it to Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, but the fact that it contains a quotation from Saint Francis of Assisi, who was born 30 years after the death of Saint Bernard, disposes of this theory. In England, there exist many manuscripts of the first three books called Musica Ecclesiastica, frequently ascribed to the English mystic Walter Hilton. But Hilton seems to have died in 1395, and there is no evidence of the existence of the work before the year 1400. Many manuscripts scattered throughout Europe ascribe the book to Jean-Le Chartier de Garçon, the great chancellor of the University of Paris, who was a leading figure in the church in the earlier part of the 15th century. The most probable author, however, especially when the internal evidence is considered, is Thomas Hammerling, known also as Thomas à Kempis, from his native town of Kempen, near the Rhine, about 40 miles north of Cologne. Hammerling, who was born in 1379 or 1380, was a member of the Order of the Brothers of Common Life and spent the last 70 years of his life at Mount St. Agnes, a monastery of Augustinian canons in the Diocese of Utrecht. Here he died on July 26 in the year 1471, after an uneventful life spent in copying manuscripts, reading and composing, and in the peaceful routine of monastic piety. With the exception of the Bible, no Christian writing has had so wide a vogue or so sustained a popularity as this. And yet, in one sense, it is hardly an original work at all. Its structure it owes largely to the writings of the medieval mystics. And its ideas and phrases are a mosaic from the Bible and the fathers of the early church. But these elements are interwoven with such delicate skill and a religious feeling at once so ardent and so sound that it promises to remain what it has been for 500 years, the supreme call and guide to spiritual aspiration. Thomas à Kempis, The Imitation of Christ on Resisting Temptation. So long as we live in this world, we cannot remain without trial and temptation. As Job says, man's life on earth is a warfare, end quote. We must therefore be on guard against temptations and watchful in prayer, that the devil find no mean of deceiving us. For he never rests, but prowls around seeking whom he may devour. No one is so perfect and holy that he is never tempted, and we can never be secure from temptation. Although temptations are so troublesome and grievous, yet they are often profitable to us, for by them we are humbled, cleansed, and instructed. All the saints endured many trials and temptations and profited by them. But those who could not resist temptations became reprobate and fell away. There is no order so holy, nor place so secluded, where there are no troubles and temptations. No man or woman can be entirely free from temptation so long as he or she lives. For the source of temptation lies within our own nature, since we are born with an inclination towards evil. When one temptation or trial draws to a close, another takes place. And we shall always have something to fight, for man has lost the blessing of original happiness. Many try to escape temptations only to encounter them more fiercely, for no one can win victory by flight alone. It is only by patience and true humility that we can grow stronger than all our foes. The man or woman who only avoids the outward occasions of evil, but fails to uproot it in himself or herself, will gain little advantage. Indeed, temptations will return upon him the sooner, and he will find himself in a worse state than before. Little by little, and by patient endurance, you will overcome them by God's help, better than by your own violence and importunity. Seek regular advice in temptation, and never deal harshly with those who are tempted, but give them such encouragement as you would value yourself. The beginning of all evil temptation is an unstable mind and lack of trust in God. Just as a ship without a helm is driven to and fro by the waves, so a careless man who abandons his proper course is tempted in countless ways. Fire tempts steel, and temptation than just man. We often do not know what we can bear, but temptation reveals our true nature. We need especially to be on guard at the very outset of temptation, for then the enemy may be more easily overcome if he is not allowed to enter the gates of the mind. He must be repulsed at the threshold as soon as he knocks. Thus the poet Ovid writes, and I quote, "Resist at the beginning, the remedy may come too late." End quote. For first there comes into the mind an evil thought, next a vivid picture, then delight, an urge to evil, and finally consent. In this way, the enemy gradually gains complete mastery. When he is not resisted at first, and the longer a slothful man or woman delays resistance, the weaker he or she becomes, and the stronger his or her enemy grows against him or her. Some people undergo their heaviest temptations at the beginning of their conversion, some towards the end of their course. Others are greatly troubled all their lives, while there are some whose temptations are but light. This is in accordance with the wisdom and justice of God's ordinance, who weighs the condition and merits of every man and disposes all things for the salvation of those whom he chooses. We must not despair, therefore, when we are tempted, but earnestly pray God to grant us his help in every need. For as St. Paul says, and I quote, "With the temptation, God will provide a way to overcome it, that we may be able to bear it." End quote. So let us humble ourselves under the hand of God in every trial and trouble. For God will save and raise up the humble in spirit. In all these trials, our progress is tested. In them, great merit may be secured, and our virtue become evident. It is no great matter if we are devout and fervent when we have no troubles. But if we show patience in adversity, we can make great progress in virtue. Some are spared severe temptations, but are overcome in the lesser ones of every day, in order that they may be humble and learn not to trust in themselves, but to recognize their frailty. We looked at the three temptations of Jesus that was read in the Gospel of Matthew. And each invitation by the devil to Jesus was worldly. Each response from Jesus, counter response from Jesus to the devil, was spiritual, which underscores Thomas à Kempis's words that Jesus was, even with his frailty, even with perhaps his own fear and trepidation as a human being, was able to thwart temptation by remaining deeply entrenched and grounded in his relationship with God. Well, hearing no others, thank you all. Again, during this season of Lent, if you don't have anything to read, I do invite you to explore Thomas à Kempis. As a matter of fact, you could do it for the entire Lenten season. they're broken into small meditations, and many of those meditations will align with even the Sunday gospel lessons. But not only that, there's a reason that the Imitation of Christ is the second most widely read text following the Bible. That says a great deal. And so, for those of you if this is your first time being introduced to Thomas à Kempis, I highly invite you, encourage you to explore him more deeply. Reverend Leandra?